Berlin is getting a real taste of total war. The terrific weight of the R.A.F. assaults on the capital of Naziland has set the Hun reeling. How he must regret the ruthless attacks he made on Warsaw, Rotterdam, Belgrade, London, Coventry and the rest. The day and night of reckoning is here. Within a period of less than a week, the R.A.F. dropped over 5,000 tons of high explosives and incendiaries on Berlin. It must have looked as bad as Hamburg at its worst. And this is how that city looked at the height of one of the raids which reduced it to a blot on the landscape. The Germans say that such attacks are unfair. Unfair, ye gods, they don't know the meaning of the word. With pride, we introduce a few of the men who executed the latest assaults on Berlin. Men from Britain, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Rhodesia and other parts of the empire. And who can best act as commentators on the raid? Why, some of the leaders.
These crews you have seen are just a few of the many in the Royal Air Force who have taken part in the last 3 great saturation raids of Berlin, which will eliminate Berlin as Germany's war center. I took part in the first of these 3 raids and found Berlin very heavily defended. The trip was a fairly easy one, and we saw another of Germany's much vaunted new weapons, which was the rocket flak. It didn't appear very effective, and I don't think it should cause us very much trouble in the future. Apart from that, the trip was fairly quiet. I'd like to introduce my 3 squadron leaders who also took part in these raids. Squadron Leader Pullen, who took part in the first raid, the same one that I did. Squadron Leader Pullen.
Well, I thought much the same as you, sir, that it was a very quiet trip and we had no bother at all. We were right over the centre of Berlin before they started throwing out the flak at us, but there was no trouble as far as the route was concerned, although we did see 1 or 2 people getting shot up.
Squadron Leader Benjamin took part in the second and greatest of these 3 raids. Squadron Leader Benjamin.
Of course, the second raid was noted for the terrific explosion we've all heard about. Certainly was a big explosion. I remember one on the Hanover trip, but that didn't compare in the least with this great flash we saw coming under the clouds. I looked down and I could see Lancasters crawling across the clouds, silhouetted against them. It really must have been a very frightening thing down below. Squadron Leader Moss was on the 3rd trip. Perhaps he'd like to say something about that.
Well, we did have a few fighters on our trip. The actual flak over Berlin was very small indeed. We saw very little of it, but we saw 3 or 4 fighters ourselves. The cloud was much thinner than on the 2 previous days. And through that cloud you could see a pretty large number of fires, some of them probably from the night before, I should think. But from the appearance of the thing, it had certainly been set pretty well alight. We had very little trouble in getting there, but one thing I did notice was the vicious way in which every German town now seems to throw up flak indiscriminately. They all look as though they're absolutely scared stiff of having anybody anywhere near them.
A crowd of very gallant gentlemen, all happy in their work.